Now we've done factoring of trinomials when there's only one variable in the trinomial, but what about factoring trinomials with two variables? As long as it's written so that the exponent is decreasing on one of the variables and then increasing on the other one, we can use the same process for factoring trinomials that we've been using when there's only one variable. I'm still going to create my box, and I will put one of the square terms in the top left corner, in this case u squared, and I will put the other squared term, which will have the other variable that's being squared, in the bottom right corner, which is where we would normally have our constant. So to get u squared, we're going to have a u times a u. To get a v squared, we know we will need to have a v times a v. Well, what that means when we multiply to get these other two corners, I'll have a u times a v and a u times a v. And that's how I will get that middle term with a uv. So now all I really need to focus on is what coefficient will I need on those v's to help me get a 6 on that middle term. So I'm still going to look at the 5, and I'm still going to look at what are factor pairs of 5. And the only one I have is 1 and 5. So I don't have anything to try besides 1 and 5. And everything is positive, so that must mean my 1v and my 5v both have to be positive. So 1v times u would be a positive 1uv, and 5v times u would be a positive 5uv. And then if I check, 5uv plus 1uv is 6uv, and 1v times 5v is 5v squared. So we have everything we need that we would get this trinomial with the two variables, and we can write this as u plus 5v times u plus v. You could write a 1v there. Just keep in mind that any sort of answer key most likely will not have a 1 there. So let's try this with number 8. Again, we'll put one of the squared variables in the top left, and we will put the other one in the bottom right. So in this case, negative 5a squared is in the bottom right, b squared is in the top left. To get b squared, it's going to be b times b. And to get a squared, we know we will need a times a. So a times b, we know will give us ab in those two remaining corners. Again, we've got 5, and the factor pair for 5 is 1 and 5. But here's where we need to be careful. We have a negative 5, but we have a positive middle term. So one of these is going to be a positive and one is going to be a negative. If I want a positive 4, I would need a positive 5 subtract 1. So 5a times b would be a positive 5ab, and negative 1a times b would be negative 1ab. If I combine these two terms, I get a positive 4ab. And a positive 5a times a negative 1a is a negative 5a squared. So if we write this in factored form, we have b minus a times b plus 5a. Let's practice with two more. Here we have x squared minus xy minus 6y squared. So let's start with x squared in the top left corner, and the minus 6y squared in the bottom right. We know we'll have x times x to give us x squared. And to get y squared, we will have y times y. So a y times an x will give us xy in our two remaining corners. Factor pairs of 6. 1 times 6, 2 times 3. And if we pay attention here, this 6 is a negative. So we have one of them is going to be negative, one of them is going to be positive. Now, I don't see a coefficient on this xy in the middle. Keep in mind that's a negative 1 xy. So we need our factor pair to give us a negative 1. If I use 2 and 3, if the 3 is my negative, negative 3 plus 2 should give me negative 1. So negative 3y times x is negative 3xy. Positive 2y times x is positive 2xy. And when I combine these two terms, I will get negative 1xy. And negative 3y times a positive 2y will multiply to give me negative 6y squared. So this trinomial factors as x plus 2y times x minus 3y. And one last one. We have p squared, and we have minus 12s squared for our two corners. Well, p times p will give us the p squared, and to get s squared, we know we will need s times s. We also see that that 12 is a negative, so we will need one of them to be positive, one of them will be negative. And factor pairs of 12 are 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. Our middle term is just a positive PS. Well, keep in mind that's a positive 1 PS. And if I look at my factor pairs, if I do 4 subtract 3, I can get a positive 1. So that's a positive 4 and a minus 3. So 4s times p is a positive 4ps. A negative 3s times p is a negative 3ps. When I combine these two terms, I do get a positive 1ps. And positive 4s times negative 3s is a negative 12s squared. So we have factors of p minus 3s times p plus 4s. So yes, we can factor trinomials that have two variables. We just need to keep in mind that each factor is going to have two variables in it, and we just need to be cautious still with watching signs and looking for factor pairs.